Doom v Vamus v Vamus Epicureans. This is the BCE Comics Pod one-shot edition. I'm your host, Nick Smith, and I'm joined by...
Stojr from Stojr Shelf. How's it going, Nick?
Very well, except I'm forgetting to change screens again, but there we go, I've got it. Alright, we are participating in Kurtis Findlay's Epic Marvel Podcast Reading Club, and this one-shot is going to be our brief thoughts on today's issue, which is Uncanny X-Men number 173, To Have and Have Not. Alright, so Wolverine and Rogue beat up some thugs to try to track down the head of the I'm sure this is meant to be the Yakuza, but I have the Yakiza written in my notes, but I'm sure it's Yakuza. Alright, so they're going to track down the head of the Yakuza, and from there, Viper and the Silver Samurai. They catch both just as they circle back around to assassinate Mariko, and they succeed in saving Mariko's life, but Rogue took some serious punishment from Viper. We later get to the wedding day for Wolverine and Mariko, but before the festivities, Mariko is visited by a mysterious man. The X-Men all get to meet Madeline Pryor, and Storm has now transitioned to her punk rock phase. But in the midst of the marriage ceremony, Mariko calls it off, claiming that Wolverine is not worthy, and we're given a hint that Jason Wingard / Mastermind has returned to manipulate events. Alright, Stojr, what are your thoughts?
So, again, like as part two of this kind of 3 or 4 part storyline, depending on which angle you look at, right? Whether it's X-Men in Japan or Mastermind setting the trap here, and then that culminating in 175. This is great stuff. I like the Rogue and Wolverine team up, and how Wolverine instantly is kind of putting her in her place, so to speak. And then I think it's at the end of this issue, where they she leverages his healing factor to heal. Is an interesting approach. Paul Smith art has some panels that are a little questionable in this issue. This is the one where I'm like the panel where Rogue is kind of flying the ninjas out of the wherever they're at, the bar or the building or whatnot. Looks a little odd, but it's more than made up for by the sort of replay of Frank Miller's sword fight between Silver Samurai and Wolverine. I think like the juxtaposition and the sort of mirroring that. I mean, because this is his stepson, right? That Wolverine killed his father or stepfather or something, right? Because he's stepbrother to Mariko, so
Right.
that means, unless it's on the mom's side, but I'm pretty sure it's the dad's side. So
Yeah.
so he's got a real big vested interest here, in fighting Wolverine here, for this. I liked all of the reactions to Madeline. I think it's pretty funny, and we get our lightsaber cameo that I mentioned before on page 296, where Lalandra pulls out the lightsaber that looks exactly like a lightsaber, other than it's just a white blade instead of a colored blade.
It's a little
Otherwise, it's pretty
wavier,
much
right?
a little bit, yeah. It's a little bit more like the Kylo Ren sabers that are a little what, they're like fractured or something like that, so that they spark and stuff like that. I was trying to read up on like why Paul Smith is not around much longer. So Paul Smith's art is going to end in 175. And he doesn't even finish that issue. I don't know if he didn't finish that issue or if that was sort of planned to, kind of have a transition to JRJR. But he, I don't think him and Claremont necessarily like always saw eye to eye, and I think he saw X-Men as a stepping stone to other things that he wanted to do. I don't think he wanted to be here long term. Is the brief research I was able to do, and that's inclusive of Storm's haircut here. So this was sort of drawn as like a joke, and then they went with it. But Paul didn't actually mean for this to be the new style for her. In as going forward. I think he threw out a couple of different designs, and this one he kind of drew as a joke. So I want to really dive into some research on like what was the interaction between Paul Smith and Claremont. I find it interesting, like what the different artists and Chris like did or didn't do or got along or didn't get along over the years. Because obviously Chris stayed for a long, long time and is a very prolific writer and really good. but who did he have a good relationship with? Who did he not? Who, how much is that on the artist? How much is that on him? I don't know. But it's an interesting behind the scenes dynamic that I never kind of thought of before. Um, but yeah, it's the idea that everybody's just kind of like in shock that she looks so much like Jean Grey is pretty funny. And I always like the comedy scene with like her just holding the dragon on her lap and like Scott, like what is this? What'd you get me into? I thought those panels were pretty strong. So yeah, great issue. The Mastermind stuff feels a little like odd, but like not odd on the read through because of what we saw like reading the Fate of the Phoenix storyline. But like when I originally read this, it was kind of like, who is this guy? Like, what is this like quick heel turn that's happening right here? So you kind of need to know the background of that character, why he's trying to seek revenge, and like what his power set is. They don't lay that out at all. It's just super mysterious here if you've never read the stuff in the past. But since we have, it lands a little bit better. What did you think?
Sure. I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I thought the dynamic between Wolverine and Rogue is interesting. I kind of grew up with the X-Men really from the 90s onwards, and thus I'm accustomed to Wolverine and Rogue being friends. I mean, heck, even today, they're both leading one of the group of the X-Men. That's in the Gail Simone run on Uncanny right now. But given the context of Rogue's introduction, I think it makes total sense that Wolverine doesn't trust her, and that she is appreciative of his savage nature, which kind of comes out. I agree with you about some of the Paul Smith's art. I like that he's trying his hand at that cinematic samurai fight here, kind of like what Miller was doing. And it also kind of makes sense that they're feeding off of some of those Japanese films, right? The Seven Samurai and stuff like that. So while I like it, I think Miller does a little bit of a better job because Paul Smith has his panels are just a little bit taller, and somehow that makes it feel just a little bit less dynamic. I almost think these two pages are very different from one another. Like the thinner panels you see on 286, I think almost work better for this than these thicker ones on 288, and I don't know why. That could just be me.
No, it's understandable. Definitely Frank did it better, and this is an homage or kind of supposed to mirror it. I mean, the only artistic justification I can give for it is like, he was fighting a dude in Frank Miller's book, and he's fighting a guy in armor here. So, they'd have to scale some of it down, I guess, to fit it within the smaller panels, I think.
True, that's a fair point. Yeah, to get all the accoutrements of the Silver Samurai, and maybe also for the height difference between the two. As you mentioned, he's conscientious of that height difference. We saw that with Colossus in the last issue. So yeah, that maybe is an element. To get to Punk Rocker Storm, though, interesting that you say that this was kind of a joke that was thrown out there. I have always kind of wondered what the impetus for this change was. I never really cared for Punk Rocker Storm, and I don't know why, honestly. I'm thinking maybe because it's just such a stark departure from the character that we knew previously. Even though we've kind of been working up to her changing perspective and attitude for the last several issues, I would think if a costume change like this happened today, I'd cynically think, oh, they're just trying to sell more action figures. But we don't have action figures of Storm, at least not yet. The Secret Wars toy line launched in the same year this book came out, 1983, and Storm isn't amongst them, so that's not an impetus for it. But I don't know. Did you have any other insights, or do we need to do some more research here, Stojr?
I think we need to do a little bit more research. But what I'll say is, like, I mean, she's in a state where her body's in flux because it was reborn. She's having these problems with her powers here, which I kind of feel like we'll talk about eventually when we get to the next Epic collection. I feel like goes nowhere because like there's a different thing that happens to her that is really more, earth shattering. Like this makes sense more in the like if you associate this with the context of something that's going to happen later that I won't spoil, but everybody knows if you've seen the X-Men cartoons or understand why the next volume is called Life Death and things like that. So I always just, with glossing things over and sort of mushing things together in my head, associate this with that other event, not just this sort of like, trying to find her way after being reborn after the Brood thing,
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, maybe then that's something we explore a little bit later. All right, any other final thoughts then, Stojr?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to see what Wolverine does after his heart's been broken.
Yep. All right, well, if you... God, sorry, you're just saying that. I'm realizing that. I quite like the next one, but you'll get to watch that tomorrow, guys. Okay, so again, if you've enjoyed our thoughts, follow us on YouTube. We're going to read, rate, and review a full big collected edition comic once a month, plus these daily one-shots. And again, hopefully tomorrow it's going to be a fun one. All right, thanks very much, guys. We'll see you next time.